You're watching the Isaiah Factor Uncensored.
It's our second half hour. Now, take a look at this. This is the hottest card on social media. The "you have been cut off" card if you had too many drinks. And that's what we're talking about tonight on the Factor Uncensored. The Texas Supreme Court is deciding a case right now. Is it the alcohol serving business fault or the driver? The Texas Dram Shop Act allows victims to sue the business where a defendant may have been overserved and cause a crash or other issues. Whose responsibility is it? What are your thoughts on this? Joining us to talk about it, Principal Bevan Biggers, defense attorney and former Harris County prosecutor Bayoji Akingbala, and owner of Reset and the Roxy, Dr. Abdullah Kudrath. Glad to have you here. First of all, when we talk about responsibility and incidents where people are drinking and driving, or they get into a situation after they leave a bar, tell us a little bit about that and what the Supreme Court is deciding.
Well, there's a statute in place. It's the Dram Shop Liability Act. And dram shop means a shop that serves alcohol. And so according to the Texas statute, if you have a provider who is serving alcohol to someone who is apparently and obviously intoxicated to the extent that they can cause harm to themselves or others, they can be liable. And so what the Supreme Court is deciding is what is apparent. On one side, the restaurant owners are saying, this individual who caused damage, when they're at our restaurant, they weren't slurring speech, they weren't falling over, they weren't acting belligerent. But what the people that are filing the lawsuit are claiming is it should have still been apparent based upon how much was served. If you serve, let's say, 4 or 5 drinks, that should have been apparent that that's a little bit too much for a patron to be consuming all at once, and that because they served so many drinks, considering the fact that they were trained under TABC, they should be held liable for.
And we have seen instances, not only in just civil cases, but also criminal cases, where district attorney's offices, TABC, will track a person back if they're involved in a drunk driving crash and they've killed someone and it's a heinous situation. They'll track it back to the bar or restaurant where that person was.
Yes, actually I had to do some research on this and called a good friend of mine, Brad Runcie, who's a DWI attorney. And you're right. In cases where an individual drives and hits someone and kills them, right, they can track it back to who served them that drink. But the difference between the Texas statute and the civil statute, they changed the word from apparent to visibly. So it's a little bit more clear that it's based upon how sloppy was that person behaving. The district attorney is going to be more interested in the outward behavior of that individual as he was drinking those drinks and before going into his vehicle.
And Abdullah, you own Reset and, of course, Roxy, where drinks are served. Your thoughts on this as a bar restaurant owner?
Yeah, you know, as a bar owner and as an emergency room doctor, I've seen both ends of the spectrum. Now, I'd like to think that everybody's responsible to contribute towards safety. Of course, it starts with the customer. They've got to be a responsible adult. Now, as a bar owner, we have an opportunity, if somebody is not being responsible, to help them out. But when we play the shifting blame game, it can be a very slippery slope. And this Supreme Court hearing can really make it difficult, because if we change the words of obviously, then how are we really supposed to know? Do we go by the number of drinks? What if it's a small lady? Or do we have to put them on a scale and measure their weight before we can serve them drinks? So it's really going to change how we conduct our policy and can make it quite challenging as well.
And of course, there are people who are what they call functioning alcoholics, and you can never tell if they had a drink.
Yeah, and that makes it very challenging, right? Because some people can tolerate, some people can't. So we're asking bartenders to conduct field sobriety tests. This can really impact if this happens, our insurance rates and our liability. And we live in a litigious society. It'll open the door for a lot of lawsuits. I mean, imagine if someone goes and takes a few drinks and rear-ends somebody, and it says, I'm gonna sue the bar, I make $1 million. His friends are going to say, shoot, let's all go take some drinks and go run into somebody. Because you can really get a payoff.
Okay, Bevan, let's talk to you. You are there on the front lines when you're creating drinks. Not just a bartender, you create drinks for bars and restaurants. And when you see people who may have had one too many, do you say that's enough, or are you able to determine that?
Absolutely, it's very easy. It is not hard. It is not difficult. I'm the queen of cutting somebody off.
Do you give out that card at the beginning?
No, I don't need to because I'm very, outspoken. But I've lost a job for calling the police to have a customer go to a sobering center. Mm-hmm. They were like, "We don't need the cops here," but this lady clearly threw up. Mm. You're allowing her to go to her car with her keys, mm-hmm. and you don't see anything wrong with that. And I've seen that with a lot of bar owners who will, they don't want bad PR at their establishment. Let's just keep it low key. This person needs their car keys taken. It's not as hard as people make it, honestly. And if I'm bartending and I'm serving, a lot of times a customer will come and get a drink from you, then they'll go to somebody else. It is your job as a team to say, hey, let me let the team know, I just cut this person off. You should not be serving them. So it's really not as hard as people make it seem, especially if you're a veteran behind the bar. Mm-hmm. You know when somebody is.
And Abdullah, let me ask you this. Is it possible, because you guys are owners, you don't know what's happening on the front lines, is it possible that people could be overserved and you don't know what's going on, but you rely on your staff? Do you train your staff to notice if they have had one too many?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a must, right? Security is very important to us, whether we have security watching over our patrons, making sure nobody's in a troublesome situation, or training our bartenders to get the right certification and the right training to be in compliance with the TABC code. Mm-hmm. I think every company has to invest that time for the safety of their patrons and to be on the right side of the law.
All right. And really quick, how do you think this case will go in the last 10 seconds?
Honestly, I think we're having a debate between policy, between public safety and between free enterprise. And I think the Supreme Court is going to be inclined to apply a common sense standard. If you have the word apparent and you open the floodgates on what apparent means and say that includes how many drinks are served, as this gentleman said here, it's going to lead to a lot of new cases and it's going to harm businesses.
All right. Thank you all for joining us here on The Factor Uncensored.